good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, it's time to have a look at another new supporter card, which is going to be coming out in Full Metal Wall in Japan, unbroken bonds over here. It is Mullane, and of course, if you know much about the history of Mullane, he's from Pokemon Sun and Moon. He specializes in Steel-type Pokemon and is affectionately referred to by Sophocles as Big Mo. So, I know it's incredibly unlikely, but I, for one, am really hoping that when it comes out over here, it's translated as Big Mo. Now, our translation, speaking of which, does come from the lovely Joe over at Cerebi.net, an awesome Pokemon website you should be checking on a rather regular basis. So, what does Mullane actually do? Well, what you can do is discard 2 Metal Energy from your hand, and then reveal 1 trainer card from your discard pile, and shuffle it into your deck. This, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely huge and gives an absolutely monumental advantage to any decks that are playing Metal Energy. Because we've talked about this on a number of occasions before, but frankly, recovering trainer cards at the moment is really difficult. This lets you get a trainer card back. This lets you take a trainer card from your discard pile and return it to your deck. Now, of course, you've got to then get it out of your deck. It's not in your hand ready to go. But we're playing stuff like Macargo at the moment that lets you search your deck and put any card on top. We've got stuff like a Rangaroo at the moment. I mean, look, if you're talking about steel decks, or metal decks as they are in the trading card game, how about playing Steven's Resolve? But Rossi, I hear you say. What about the fact that it ends your turn? Well, not only can you use Metagross here, and then it won't end your turn if it's in the active, but of course that's a deck that will be playing Metal Energy. Yay! The thing is, Puzzle of Time got rotated, and Puzzle of Time was the universal way we could get any card back from the discard, including trainer cards. And we have some options nowadays for recovering trainer cards. We have, in fact, the other Rangaroo, the one from Ultra Prism. This tends to be the favoured way that Zoroark decks get them back, because you just put 3 cards in your discard pile on the bottom of your deck. And then there are GX attacks, like Decidueye and Bayonet, and indeed Eevee, which all have the same GX attack, weirdly, that allow you to grab any free cards from the discard pile and put them into your hand. Or indeed, you could go for a little bit of the old Gardevoir, which lets you take 10 cards and shuffle them into your deck. So it's not that we don't have ways to recover these item cards at the moment. It's that we do not have good universal ways to recover them. And the thing is, all the Pokemon I've just shown you, their attacks, they're not ideal. And that's essentially what you've got. What Mullane does here is allows you to recover these cards without having to use your attack for the turn. It is frankly absolutely ridiculous. And that whole discarding 2 energy from your hand, yeah, it's pretty much a moot point in metal decks because you've got Mount Coronet. Mount Coronet lets you put 2 metal energy from the discard pile into your hand. So, with Mullane, you discard 2 metal energy and then shuffle a trainer card from your discard pile back into your deck. And then with Mount Coronet, you just pick them straight back up again. Which means if you've got something like an Ultra Ball, for argument's sake, you can just discard them with Mullane, pick them back up again with Mount Coronet, and then discard them to use an Ultra Ball. And this has got to be a deliberate combo. I refuse to believe the designers, the makers of the Pokemon trading card game over in Japan, didn't have this in mind when they designed this card. This must have been an extremely deliberate thing whereby they're going, look, this is for metal decks, because they can use Mount Coronet. Now, of course, the fact that you're using Mount Coronet does open up some rather interesting strategical decisions here. Because, of course, you can't use Shrine of Punishment. And if you're using a non-GX deck, you may well wish to use Shrine of Punishment. I mean, in an ideal world here, you end up making a good deck out of Metagross, because then you can just use Steven's Resolve and search for Mount Coronet when you need to get the energy back, search for Shrine of Punishment when you don't, etc, etc, etc. That, ladies and gentlemen, would be ideal. It's not often going to work, but it would be absolutely ideal here. So, what options does this open up for metal decks that other decks don't have? I mean, essentially, two of the biggest ones here are healing and disruption. So in terms of healing, we can use Max Potion, we can use Ace Roller. Problem being that you've only got so many of them. Now, to be fair, Palpad will put 2 Ace Roller back into your deck, Mullane will only put 1, and if you're using Mullane as your supporter, then trying to use Ace Roller as your supporter as well is a little bit awkward. You do, of course, have Lieutenant Surge's strategy coming in Unbroken Bonds, which will allow you to play 3 supporters including it, i.e. it and 2 more supporters, during one turn, but really I think we need to stick to item cards here. If we want trainer cards, we can just play Palpad. I think the real mileage in this is getting item cards. And stadiums, we'll get to stadiums in a moment. So Max Potion here, clearly a good one. But how about Crushing Hammer and Enhanced Hammer? Crushing Hammer must have been one of the main reasons Puzzle of Time has been banned and expanded, because it's based on a coin flip. So you play 4 of these, you're only really ever expecting to hit 2 of them, which does help a little bit, I suppose, to balance it out. And then, you're only hitting 2 of them, and it's fine. Puzzle of Time meant you could use it over and over again, that was a pain. Orangaroo means that you can reuse them, but it is an attack, so it's not the end of the world. But then, of course, in comes Mullane. And you might be thinking, yeah, but come on, Wassy, Mullane's a supporter card. Yeah, but remember what I've just told you about Palpad, and also I should mention here, Lucamine and Lieutenant Surge? These can all be put together to essentially give you Crushing Hammer every turn. Now, I'm not saying it's the only way you can play this, but I am saying it is a good way to play it. Just get your Crushing Hammer back, and then use Palpad and Lucamine to get Mullane back, and use Lieutenant Surge when you need to use Lucamine and Mullane, or to play double Mullane or whatever. And don't forget, you can use Mullane to get back Palpad to get back a couple of Mullane. And anytime you're thinking, oh, I'm using too many supporters here, I'm not going to get to use the supporters I want, please do remember that Lieutenant Surge is a thing. I should also mention here, before I forget to say so, Solgaleo Prism Star is another really good option here in terms of using the energy, because it lets you, for 1 metal energy, attach 1 metal energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way you like, for each Pokemon that your opponent's got in play. So if they've got 6 Pokemon in play, full bench, you've got 6 energy in the discard that you can attach. But you've got to have them in the discard, which is where Solgaleo comes in here. Maybe you end up using something like Super Scoop with Mullane. So, Super Scoop Up, I should say. We don't need to forget the Up, that's just mean. And don't forget the Super, because Scoop Up was an Ace spec, which was way better. Although, once per deck. Although it did have a Cyclone on the end. I digress. Flip a coin if heads pick up one of your Pokemon. Unreliable and flippy, but once you can use it over and over again, it becomes a whole heap better. And at this stage, I need to give a quick shout out to stadiums, because of course Mount Coronet, Shrine of Punishment, I've already mentioned them. They are probably the 2 most likely you'd be using in a deck like this, although if you're using GXs, maybe you don't use Shrine of Punishment, because that'll hurt you as well. Problem is, your opponent can play their own supporters, your opponent can play Field Blower. Sooner or later, it's incredibly hard. If your opponent really wants to stop you having a stadium in play, it is really hard to keep a stadium in play at the moment, because they can replace it, they can play Field Blower, etc. But with Mullane, you can basically go, look, I've just got more of these than you. It's not the easiest thing ever to use. Now, the discarding the 2 energy, I'm not worried about, because we've got Mount Coronet. And it's really not an issue. And if you're really worried like that, play Energy Recycler that lets you get 5 basic energy back into your deck. It's not a problem for me, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think discarding the energy is a problem at all. For other decks, maybe. For metal decks, no. Making sure you've got 2 energy in hand is a bit of a pain. Professor's Letter has rotated out. So, I mean, you have got Rabombi here, but I don't know how many people are actually playing Rabombi here, although it does let you search for 2 energy, so, you know, it is an option. But as long as you've got the energy in hand, I don't think the discarding is a problem. The problem is, you can only play so many Mullane, and it's your supporter card for the turn, so if you're playing something like Mullane, you're not playing Cynthia to give yourself a card advantage. You're not playing Guzma to KO a bench Pokemon. But with Palpad and Lusamine to recover supporters, and Lieutenant Surge's strategy to use more than one in one turn, get ready, ladies and gentlemen, to see an awful lot of metal decks really taking advantage of this. Bearing in mind, we've talked recently about the fact that you can stall with metal decks really quite nicely. I showed you a card called Metal Core Barrier the other day. It only stays on for one turn, but it reduces damage done to metal Pokemon by 70. And in this video, I explained to you how metal decks can really play keep away at the moment, can really stop being KO'd. And having a card like this in those decks really will help you to reuse stuff like Max Potion. I'm not going to just repeat everything I said in that video, but do check it out. I'll pop a link in the description. This is a 4 WOSI card, and that could be a little bit generous, but it could also be a little bit misery. This is exactly the kind of card whereby it doesn't always see a huge amount of play, but then somebody comes along and just really takes advantage of this and ends up getting essentially more help than they should, because they can reuse item cards and stadium cards in a way that you just plain can't. But ladies and gentlemen, this is a part of the video where I would very much like to know what you think about Mullane. So do please let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! But please remember, the most important thing as always, be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWazzy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WazzyPlays for some more Wazzy action. But by far the most important thing as always is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.